Welcome back, everyone. We're about to take a deep dive into, well, a president you might not think about that often.
William McKinley.
Yeah, McKinley. He's sort of overshadowed, isn't he? I mean, by Teddy Roosevelt, who, everyone remembers.
Right. Big personality,
Uh,
big stick and all that.
exactly. But McKinley, I think he's really got a fascinating story, how he kind of steered America right into the 20th century. And we've got a ton of material to get through today.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we've got those excerpts you sent me from that American History Hit podcast.
Yeah, I thought those primary source accounts are really interesting.
Oh, they're great. Give us a real feel for the guy.
Definitely.
So McKinley, his life, it's like a whirlwind tour of American history, right? I mean, we're talking childhood in an Ohio ironworks family.
Can you imagine? No.
To the White House, and then, of course, the assassination, which is just, well, tragic.
It really is. And I think what strikes me is how McKinley sort of embodies this this bridge between two different Americas, right?
Totally.
He's holding on to these 19th century values, but he's leading during this time of just massive change, technologically, socially.
It's like the world is speeding up around him.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's maybe why he sometimes gets overlooked, because his story is, it's a bit messy.
It's not a simple narrative.
Not at all.
Okay, so let's picture this, right? Little William McKinley, seventh of 9 kids, in a family of Ohio ironworkers. Like, what was that dinner table like?
Oh, man. I can only imagine. Chaotic, for sure.
Yeah.
But also, you can kind of see how it would build character.
Yeah, that resilience.
And work ethic.
Built in from the beginning.
Absolutely.
And then, I mean, talk about a turning point. He's 18, the Civil War breaks out, and he enlists against his mother's wishes.
That's got to take some guts.
Oh, yeah. 4 years of service, rises to the rank of commissary sergeant, making sure those soldiers are fed, equipped, ready to fight.
That's a crucial role. I mean, that's real leadership under pressure right there. And I bet it instilled in him this deep sense of practicality and empathy, which I think, you can see those traits in how he led later on.
It's like a direct line from those battlefields to the White House.
Totally.
And you just can't talk about McKinley's rise without mentioning Rutherford B. Hayes.
Another Ohioan who became president.
Yeah. And he was like a mentor to McKinley, wasn't he? Guiding him, from those trenches to the world of law and politics.
Yeah, that mentorship is so key, isn't it? Like Hayes saw something in McKinley, some potential, and he nurtured it. Makes you wonder how things might have been different without that.
Oh, for sure. So McKinley's got this war experience, this powerful mentor, and then he lands in the House of Representatives, and he's there for like 15 years, right? And he even chairs the Ways and Means Committee.
Yeah.
Talk about a powerhouse position.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to be like the perfect training ground for a future president, wouldn't you say?
It is. It's this amazing blend of experience, right? But it's important to remember what's going on in America during this time, too.
Right. It's not happening in a vacuum.
No. Industrialization, cities are booming, the railroads, I mean, they're connecting the country in ways that no one ever thought possible.
What?
So all these forces, they're shaping McKinley, but they're also going to shape his absolutely groundbreaking campaign for president.
Oh, man. That 1896 campaign, that was like nothing America had ever seen before.
It's true.
We're talking about the first truly modern campaign. It changed the game completely.
Completely. And McKinley's campaign manager, Mark Hanna, was a genius. He understood the power of mass media before almost anyone else.
It's like he invented the playbook.
Pretty much. And he used everything. Direct mail on a huge scale, pamphlets in all these different languages, and even those campaign buttons that we still see today, that's where they started. But here's the thing. The whole time this is going on, McKinley's just chilling in Canton, Ohio.
The front porch campaign? I mean, it sounds crazy, right?
Right.
A candidate just staying put, letting the people come to him.
But it was brilliant.
It was. It let him control the message, tailor it to each group that visited, and he could stay close to Ida, his wife, who, as we know, was dealing with some health issues.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was masterful on so many levels. First of all, it played to his strengths, right? McKinley, he was a gifted orator. This let him really connect with voters on a personal level, but he didn't have to do all that, grueling travel that campaigns usually involve back then.
Right, right.
And second, by staying in Canton, he projected this sense of stability, of normalcy, which was really important because, the country's still reeling from that economic panic in 1893.
Oh, yeah, things were really shaky.
Exactly.
But the logistics of it all, too. I mean, can you imagine coordinating all those delegations, hundreds of thousands of people all coming to Canton?
It's mind-boggling. It really shows you the organizational power of the Republican Party machine back then. I mean, they were a well-oiled machine.
Right.
And it worked.
Oh, yeah.
McKinley wins against William Jennings Bryan, who was pushing for, um, free silver. And it's a real turning point in American politics.
Yeah, that free silver debate, that was more than just about currency, wasn't it? It was really this clash between rural and urban interests.
Totally.
It's amazing how one single issue can just become this lightning rod for anxieties about economic power.
And who benefits?
Exactly. So McKinley steps into the presidency, and the country's, well, it's still recovering from that panic of 1893. That's going to be a tough situation to walk into.
Oh, yeah. It's a trial by fire for sure.
Yeah.
The nation's trying to find its footing. And at the same time, the whole world is changing, like at lightning speed.
So what's his approach? I mean, how does he even begin to tackle all these challenges?
Well, McKinley, he's really all about stability and prosperity,
Yeah.
He believes in American industry, wants to protect it from all that foreign competition.
So that's where policies like the McKinley tariffs come in, right? Hiking up those import duties.
Exactly. The idea is to give American businesses an edge.
It's interesting, though, because that whole debate about, protectionism versus free trade, it's still going on today.
Oh, yeah. It's a classic economic dilemma.
It feels like a direct line from McKinley's time to our crazy globalized world today.
Right. It's a timeless question. I mean, on the one hand, you're trying to help domestic industries, but then critics say, well, it raises prices for consumers and maybe it even hurts global trade overall.
It makes you wonder if there's ever a perfect answer. But McKinley's presidency, it wasn't just about, economics. He also ends up leading America onto the world stage, which, I mean, he initially resisted, especially with his Civil War experience.
Oh, yeah. He knew firsthand the cost of war.
For sure.
The Spanish-American War was a huge turning point, both for McKinley and for the country as a whole. And it's this whole story, this really tangled story, involving the rise of yellow journalism, that sensationalist press.
Oh, man. Yellow journalism.
America's kind of growing appetite for global influence.
It's wild to think that those newspapers, with their crazy headlines and often, made-up stories, could actually push a nation towards war. But it did.
It's true. The media was a totally different beast back then. Newspapers had so much power. And when the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor in 1898, I mean, some papers, like those owned by William Randolph Hearst, they pounced on it.
It's like they saw an opportunity.
They blamed Spain, whipped up this public frenzy, and pretty soon everyone's demanding action.
It's such a stark reminder of how misinformation, how propaganda, it can have these real-world consequences, And it's so interesting because we now believe that the explosion was probably an accident, but back then everyone saw it as this deliberate attack by Spain.
Exactly. And that perception, fueled by the press, it created this fever for war. And even McKinley, who, like we said, had seen war up close, even he found it really hard to resist.
He must have been torn, knowing what war really meant.
Sending American troops into battle couldn't have been an easy decision.
Yeah.
He was a reluctant warrior, for sure. But the pressure was enormous. Public outrage, political maneuvering, and in the end, it all led to war. A short war, granted, but a decisive one for the United States. And it ended with America acquiring these new territories like Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines.
Say, America was going through this growth spurt on the world stage.
Totally. Suddenly a power with these overseas territories and this growing influence on global affairs.
And McKinley, who at first wanted to avoid all that, he finds himself right at the helm of this huge transformation.
Talk about irony.
So let's shift gears a little bit here. Talk about McKinley's personal life, specifically his relationship with Ida.
Oh, their story's really something. It's about love and devotion, but also profound heartbreak.
Yeah. Ida, she was an amazing woman. Ahead of her time in many ways, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Educated, fiercely independent, and a real advocate for women's rights. Sadly, though, she experienced all these personal losses, which really impacted her health.
Losing her children on top of other family tragedies, it took a terrible toll. I mean, it's believed she might have had epilepsy, which back then wasn't well understood at all.
And often stigmatized. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think we need to challenge that historical narrative that paints her as just a recluse or an invalid. Even with her health struggles, Ida stayed involved in social and political issues. She corresponded with people like Susan B. Anthony,
Wow.
and she championed all these causes she believed in.
It's so inspiring that she maintained that strong spirit, that commitment, despite all that she went through, both personally and with those societal limitations.
It says a lot about her, and it says a lot about their partnership. McKinley adored Ida, and he made decisions like that front porch campaign in part because of her needs. They were a true team.
It reminds you that behind every president, there's often a remarkable spouse playing a vital role, even if we don't always see it.
And in Ida's case, her story also shines a light on the challenges that women faced in the late 19th century, trying to navigate all those societal expectations while also dealing with chronic health issues.
It's heartbreaking, but their story, it also shows us this incredible love and loyalty.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about the event that tragically cut McKinley's presidency short, his assassination at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo in 1901.
Such a devastating event. It sent shockwaves through the nation, and it really had a profound impact, not just on the presidency itself, but on American society as a whole.
It's chilling to think that something as simple as McKinley's, his habit of shaking hands with the public, this gesture of openness, that it could be exploited in such a horrible way.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how accessibility and security, they're always in this delicate balance, especially for leaders. And what makes it even more complex is that his assassin, Leon Czolgosz, he was an anarchist. He was opposed to the presidency itself.
Wow. So it wasn't personal against McKinley.
No, Czolgosz wasn't driven by some, personal hatred. It was this radical ideology. He wanted to dismantle the entire power structure.
So in a way, McKinley became the symbol of the very system that Czolgosz wanted to destroy.
Exactly.
Tragic irony. It really shows the dangers that leaders face, especially during times of social and political unrest.
It makes you wonder how this event changed the way we think about presidential security. Did it force America to finally confront the fact that their leaders are vulnerable?
It's a sobering thought. Before McKinley's assassination, security for the president was, well, it was shockingly lax. I mean, 3 presidents assassinated within 36 years, yet there was this real resistance to having a dedicated protection force.
Hard to imagine that today.
Right.
But back then, the idea of a permanent security detail for the president, it was seen as, too monarchical or even tyrannical by some. People were worried about creating this barrier between the president and the people, and some thought it was just, an unnecessary expense.
But McKinley's assassination, it changed all that.
It did.
It forced the nation to finally acknowledge the reality of those threats, and it led to the creation of the Secret Service as we know it today.
It's important to remember, though, that the Secret Service didn't start out protecting the president. Their original focus was on counterfeiting.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't until 1906, so 5 years after McKinley's death, that Congress officially gave them the job of presidential protection.
So, in a way, McKinley's death paved the way for the level of security that we see around presidents today. A tragic legacy, but one that has, no doubt, saved lives.
It really highlights that constant tension in democracies, right? Between keeping leaders accessible and also keeping them safe. It's a balancing act that continues to be a challenge all over the world.
Now, what about McKinley's legacy as president? He's, like we said, often overshadowed by Teddy Roosevelt, but his accomplishments were significant, right?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, McKinley led America through this period of just immense transformation. He was there for the end of the Gilded Age,
Yeah.
with all its economic booms, but also its huge inequality. And he helped usher in the Progressive Era, which aimed to tackle all these social problems, and push for reforms.
So he might not have been a progressive himself, but his presidency laid the groundwork for a lot of the changes that came after, like trust busting, advancements in labor rights, and more government regulation of industry.
Exactly.
And we can't forget his role in America becoming a global power, even if it was through, a controversial war.
Yeah, the Spanish-American War. It was short, but it had this lasting impact on America's place in the world and its relationships with those new territories.
It makes you think, what if McKinley had served his full second term? How would things have played out differently?
Right. I mean, would he have continued with those protectionist policies? Would he have been more interventionist in foreign policy? Or would he have gone in a totally different direction?
It's one of those what ifs that just, get historians all fired up. Would he have, would he have maybe tempered some of that energetic expansionism that we see with Roosevelt?
It's impossible to know for sure, but the fact that we ask these questions, it shows just how much impact McKinley had. His absence left this real void.
It really feels like his assassination marked the end of an era, like
Yeah.
the closing of the 19th century, and then this new century begins, full of, well, both promise and uncertainty. It's funny, isn't it? We remember McKinley mostly for his death, this tragic end, not so much for all the things he actually did as president.
It does seem like that assassination kind of overshadows everything else.
Yeah, like it's the main thing people remember.
It happens a lot, unfortunately, with historical figures.
I guess we tend to focus on the dramatic stuff and an assassination that's about as dramatic as it gets.
Definitely. But to really get McKinley, you have to look beyond that,
To his character, to his legacy.
Exactly. He was more than just a victim.
So what are some of those key takeaways about him, about who he was, the things we should remember?
Well, McKinley, he was known for his integrity, his strong work ethic, and he really was dedicated to the well-being of the American people.
He had that reputation, didn't he?
He did. And he was also really good at building consensus. He could navigate those tricky political situations.
It's funny. I remember going to Canton, Ohio years ago as a kid, and all I could think about was the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Of course.
It never even occurred to me that it was also, the home of a president. A president who played this huge role in where America went next.
It's like history's hidden in plain sight sometimes.
Totally. We associate a place with one thing and we forget about all these other layers.
Right. All these other stories waiting to be told.
Makes you want to go back and see those places with new eyes, doesn't it?
Yeah. And with McKinley, there's so much to discover. His personal life, his political battles, those economic policies, the Spanish-American War, and then the assassination. It all comes together to tell this really compelling story about America at a crossroads.
But he does get overshadowed, doesn't he? By Teddy Roosevelt, who just had this larger than life personality.
Oh, definitely. McKinley's steady hand. It's easy to miss next to all that Roosevelt dynamism.
It's almost like, I don't know, like history is written by the successors, not the guys who came before.
It can feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
But McKinley deserves credit for his own achievements, for guiding America through all that change and setting the stage for so many of the reforms and advancements that followed.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it when it comes to William McKinley?
I hope they get a sense of how complex history is, and how important it is to look deeper beyond just the surface, to try to understand the motivations, the challenges, the successes of those who shaped our world. McKinley might not have been the flashiest guy, but he provided this steady hand at a time when America really needed it.
Well said. And for anyone who wants to keep exploring McKinley's world, I highly recommend the McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. It's a fantastic resource, really digs deep into his life and legacy. You never know, you might even find some hidden gem in there, something that sheds new light on this fascinating president. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the life and times of William McKinley. We hope you enjoyed the journey with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into history.